I used to do a lot of exploring with my friends, especially in places we weren't allowed to, and especially at night. One night, me and my friend Jaden were off to check out some abandoned Catholic school that was like a 20-minute drive away. We had heard about it through friends who said it was set to be demolished soon. We had heard there was no security actually stationed on the property, just a private security vehicle that would drive by once every hour or so. Jaden parked down the street, then it was a short walk to the building. Everything about the building was creepy and off-putting. The old Gothic architecture, the overgrown lawn, broken windows, and ivy covering its walls. It was like the perfect setting for a horror movie. Getting in was easy. We found a large broken window that seemed to have been made a common entryway by other explorers. There were so many holes in the wood, and each floorboard groaned and cracked under the tiniest amount of pressure, making us feel very unconfident in its ability to hold our weight. Soon, we found stairs and went up to the next floor. The whole place was covered in litter and beer bottles. It was almost impossible to walk without making a ton of noise. We walked through the hall, kicking trash and making every floorboard squeak as we did, shining our lights in every room. A lot of them still had old desks left behind, but most of them were just empty. The place felt a lot bigger once you were actually inside it. It seemed like once we reached the end of the hall, there were 3 more intersecting hallways, all of them too dark to see all the way down, even with our lights. It was creepy, to say the least. Even as someone with urban exploration experience, I couldn't shake the fear of seeing someone or something every time I shined my light into the darkness. We began to hear the sound of a piano. My blood ran cold upon hearing it. Me and Jaden both stopped walking and looked at each other. Someone was playing some creepy, repetitive melody on a piano. It was distant, but it was definitely from somewhere on this floor. I didn't know what to think. I whispered to Jaden, asking what we should do. He stood listening for a second and said, "I don't like this, we should probably just leave." So we turned and started walking back towards the stairs. I was trying my hardest not to make a noise, but it was literally impossible. There was just too much glass and other trash on the floor. Normally, encountering other explorers isn't usually scary, but whoever this person was just playing a very creepy, sad-sounding melody on a piano. Hearing that tune in an abandoned building at night was just way too creepy for us, even if the person was completely harmless. I cringed when Jaden accidentally kicked a glass bottle, which was loud as hell. The piano stopped. I told him what the hell, and he told me to relax, saying there was no way whoever that was didn't already know we were here. We kept walking, but I was even more scared now that the piano had stopped. The only sound was our movement. After what felt like a century, we made it to the stairway. Then my blood ran cold for the second time that night. There was the sound of someone saying very softly, yet loud enough for us to hear in a demanding tone, "Come back." Jaden, who was in front of me, said "fuck that" out loud and quickened his pace down the stairs. I followed suit. I looked out into the hall where the voice had come from, but didn't see anyone. I was also too afraid to shine my light there, though, so for all I knew, some crazy person was watching us through the darkness. We found the window we came in through and got the hell out of there. Realistically, I know it was just some squatter, but still a horrifying experience nonetheless. A few weeks ago, I decided to break into this abandoned industrial building in my city when I had nothing better to do one evening. The place has been abandoned for as long as anyone can remember. I honestly have no idea how and why it hasn't been demolished yet. By the time I got there, it was dark out, but luckily I brought a flashlight with me, because the building is surrounded by wilderness, so there were no streetlights or anything like that. It was honestly pretty lackluster. The whole place had been completely emptied out, and a lot of the walls were torn down. The whole building was basically just a shell. I was beginning to think this whole trip was a waste of time and gas money, when I noticed stairs leading up to the second floor. I decided I'd make one last attempt to save this trip from being entirely a disappointment, by at least scoping out the upper floor. I took the stairs up and walked alongside a wall that was riddled with large openings, allowing me to see outside. I stopped when I saw a light gleaming through the tall grass outside. It was someone holding a light approaching the building. I decided to wait and see who it was, in the off chance it was a police officer or something like that. Now, I don't know who exactly I was expecting to see out there, but I definitely wasn't imagining anything remotely like what I did see. Emerging from the tall grass surrounding the building came a skinny, deranged-looking man holding a lantern in one hand and a long blade in the other. It looked like a machete. He had long, scattered dreadlocks and was wearing a tattered red shirt and shorts. He was hunched over slightly and had this determined demeanor about him, like he was hunting. I felt my heart begin to beat faster as I saw him enter the building. I had to make a run for my car, which was on the opposite side of the building, just my luck. I turned my light off and went back down the stairs, heading towards the opposite side of the building. I started to move faster when I heard him screaming. He was screaming and shouting gibberish at the top of his lungs, and I could hear him running around close by. The man sounded utterly insane. Words can't even describe how terrified I was at that exact moment. I was making progress towards the side of the building I came in from, and was starting to think I'd be able to leave without incident, when the screams suddenly got louder. I stopped, trying to pinpoint where exactly they were coming from, but he stopped screaming right after that. There was nothing but pure silence now. It was extremely unnerving. I started quickly moving forward again, but leapt back in reaction to a machete swinging at me with force from the darkness. I screamed and could see him. He was reaching through an opening in the wall, growling like a wild animal and sticking his whole arm through to swing the weapon at me. I ran around him, and his screams picked up again. I hauled ass all the way out of the building into my car, which was thankfully not parked too far. He chased me all the way to my car, swinging the machete with this manic look on his face even I could make out from the quick glances I took at him while literally running for my life. He even went as far as to chase my car down the road as I drove off, but gave up shortly. I could feel the adrenaline surging through my body. It had to have taken me 6 minutes at least to get my breathing back to normal. I desperately tried to calm myself down as I was just thankful to be alive. That surprise swing he got at me could have easily ended my life if I was only a couple feet closer. That man was clearly very ill, and I hope he's currently off the streets for good. It was a Friday night in October that started out like any other. I was hanging out with my friends Evan and Luke at Evan's house. We spent most of the night playing 2K on the PS4, but that soon got boring, so we smoked some weed and tried to figure out what to do next. Evan lives out in the country, so there's big advantages and disadvantages in terms of finding something fun to do with your friends. Hopefully being faded would help with that. Eventually, we landed on exploring this abandoned house Evan was talking up, in honor of the spooky season, I guess. He said it was close enough to walk to, and it was this really freaky abandoned house that's super old and has been empty forever. So we got some heavy-duty flashlights, a hammer in case we had to force our way in, and we were off. It was probably a 15-minute walk down this gravel road. Most of the road was just surrounded by woods, but the few houses we walked past looked abandoned as well, even though they couldn't have been because some had cars in the driveways, and some even had lights on. Luke cracked a shitty joke about being in the hood of the country, whatever that was supposed to mean. Finally, as we approached the end of the street, Evan pointed out the house. Admittedly, as we approached the house, I got a scared gut feeling, like I was having second thoughts finally seeing the house, but I brushed it off. Next, we had to figure out a way in. Evan said although he had never explored it himself, lots of people he knew had, and they claimed that every time a new entrance was made, it would always be sealed off within a matter of days. Sure enough, as we circled the exterior of the house, each known entrance Evan pointed out was sealed. We used the hammer to yank boards off a broken window and climb in. The first thing we picked up on after climbing in was that it was hot as hell in there. It had to have been at least 15 degrees warmer than outside, which was really strange given that it was probably only 50 degrees outside. There was a lot of furniture in there, most of which had been kicked around or destroyed. It was evident we weren't the first people to have been there. We made our way over to a kitchen. From there, we sort of unintentionally split up. There were stairs in the kitchen that led to some downstairs room, or basement, which Luke went down without saying anything, so me and Evan continued wandering through the first floor. All the while we were exploring, there were a lot of house sounds around us, like cracks in the floorboards. Some of them were loud enough to find concerning, but Evan didn't seem to have any reaction to them, so neither did I. Evan and I found stairs going up and took them to the second floor. It was even hotter up there than it was downstairs. Just then, we heard a door slamming shut down the hall that made us both say, "What the fuck?" out loud. I looked at Evan and I said, "That's gotta be Luke, right?" "It has to be," he said. He then turned to the hall and said, "Yo, Luke, get over here." There was silence for a few moments until we heard the slightest, muffled sound of a woman laughing from down the hall. Then, the corner of someone's face peered out of a doorway. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or woman, because all you could see was the upper left side of their face. But whoever it was, it sure as hell wasn't Luke. Evan took a step forward, looking like he was about to say something, when in almost exact fashion someone peered out of a doorway diagonal across the hall from the other one. This one was a lot closer to us, and it looked like a man. I whispered, "Go, go, go," and me and Evan speed walked back to the stairs. It broke into a run as we suddenly heard the door closest to the stairs, which we had been just standing next to, bang open with force. We ran downstairs into the kitchen yelling Luke's name, but didn't get an answer. There was the sound of multiple people coming down the staircase, so we had to leave without him. We ran down the street until we had put a safe distance between us and that house. I was about to pull out my phone to call Luke when we heard him calling us from further down the road. He said there were people outside of the house and we had to run. We all ran to Evan's house and made our way to his room, trying not to wake his family up. Luke said that when he went to the basement, it was super hot and smelled like rotting flesh in there. He said he kept hearing noises and thought there were other people in there, so he went back outside and tried calling Evan and I, but we must have not realized our phones were ringing. Then he said he saw someone that wasn't Evan or I watching him from an upstairs window, so he ran further down the street. Evan and I told Luke what we had seen, and at this point we were all thoroughly freaked the fuck out. We couldn't think of any reason why those people were in there, or what they could have been doing. Checking out that house was an idea we never floated again, though.